Hello, I'm John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George in British Columbia. For our international guest, where is Prince George, British Columbia? It's about 700 kilometers north of Vancouver, one of the most beautiful places in Canada. So we are approaching spring, so it's going to be a beautiful summer. Today I have a special guest at a special podcast. This podcast is 100 podcast that I've done in this location. And our guest today is Selen Alpay.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the 100th broadcast.
And I have known Selen for quite a while. He has been in Prince George. How long have you been in Prince George?
15 years now.
15 years.
15 years.
Yeah, and then Selen is the owner-operator of the Canadian Tire store in Prince George, which is a big store. And where does the name Canadian Tire come from?
Well, it came from two brothers who brought Canadian Tire to light 100 years ago now.
Wow.
The Billis brothers brought it to Toronto. They were in a very old building, obviously, and back in the day, the clerks were on roller skates, and that's how they would get your product to you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they were on roller skates. Yeah, that was its claim to fame. And the building still exists in downtown Toronto on...
where it all started.
Yeah, where it all started. Yeah, Yonge and Davenport. Yeah.
And it's a big organization right now.
It is. We're almost up to 600 stores across the country now.
Just in Canada?
Just in Canada, yeah.
Why not North America?
They tried to go to the States at one point, but were not successful, so they brought everything back home again to Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the focus now is in Canada.
Canada, yeah.
And you started with them 1978?
That's very good. Yes, that's true. I started when I was 17 years old. We don't have to talk about my age currently, but
right.
It's been a lot of years with Canadian Tire.
And so you started as a clerk type of an.
I did. I started before. I'm going to date myself here, but before we had computer systems for our inventories, we had this card system, and the inventory needed to be counted once a month, and that was my job. I by hand counted the inventory. And
it's come a long way since, right?
1 month cycle. Yeah, it's come a long way. And then I worked in different departments, and I liked the interaction with our customers and people.
So you worked your way up so you got your schooling in Ontario. You were born on the...
I was born in Istanbul, Turkey.
Of all places.
Of all places. And
why?
And then my father, who was a mechanical engineer, he was a professor. He had a year's sabbatical leave where he decided he was going to go to Detroit. And so we lived in Detroit for a couple of years. My sister was born there, and then we migrated to Kitchener-Waterloo in Canada, in Ontario, in 1963.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is your nationality where you were born then Turkish?
I have a Canadian passport,
right?
Yeah, but I was born on my passport. It says
born in Turkey,
Istanbul, Turkey. Yeah,
Istanbul, Turkey. Oh my goodness!
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I can't go back because I didn't do military service. Obviously.
Oh, that was mandatory.
Yeah, it was mandatory, and even to this day, if you were to go back to Istanbul, the first thing they would do is see your passport, understand that you were born there, didn't do military service. They would put you in a Turkish jail and then negotiate how much it was going to cost you to get out of the country.
It's a fraud.
It's a fraud, yeah.
Was it 2 years? Mandatory military?
Military, yeah.
Yeah, I did that in Holland.
Did you?
Drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Air Force, yeah.
No.
So, okay, so then you moved to
Ontario, Kitchener-Waterloo.
Kitchener-Waterloo. You got your education there.
Yes.
You did your high school and all that kind of stuff, and then
High school, yeah, and yeah. Sadly, I wasn't much of a scholar.
Oh,
But,
no kidding! How could it?
it's
what
my
went wrong there?
Well, to be honest with you, what went wrong there is my father was a university professor, and we did not see eye to eye.
Yeah.
There was a 50-year generation gap between the two of us, and he insisted that I need to go to university. And because I was a rebel, I chose not to go to university just to annoy him, which worked, but it wasn't really a good outcome for me.
Wasn't it?
Well, not from a scholastic perspective.
Oh, I thought it was a very good outcome for you, actually. You know, kind of looking back. So you did that. Then from there, and then you started working,
I started working in a Canadian Tire store. Yeah,
that's where you started to work.
That's where I started.
When you were 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
And then you kind of stuck with the model of the Canadian Tire.
Absolutely,
culture.
And it's interesting because I worked in that first store for 11 years, and I did everything in that store anybody with
right from the ground up.
Yeah, right from the ground up. So currently, my staff today understand when I commiserate with them because there's not a job I haven't done that they're doing.
Yeah,
which makes it for a very good relationship with my team. So yeah, I did every job in that store. I became the store manager. And at one point I thought in my career, if I get to be the store manager of a Canadian Tire store, that I'm going to be set for life. I'm going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
But then years went by and I thought, why am I doing this for somebody else when I could be doing it for myself?
Exactly.
So it was
the entrepreneur within you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first applied, I was turned down because they thought I was too young. I was only 31.
When you first applied, meaning you wanted to manage the store.
I wanted to own the store.
Yeah, exactly. The store.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The infrastructure of the stores is developed by Canadian Tire organization, and then they hire very selectively people that can buy or become the owners of operating the store.
Yeah, and it's an interesting process for sure. It's a 3-day interview that you have with Canadian Tire Corporation, and should they accept you, where I was fortunate enough to be accepted, you go to
even after you worked there since you were 17.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How old were you then when you had to do the 3-day interview?
I was 33.
Pretty young, eh?
Yeah. That was a daunting experience. I know a lot about Canadian Tire, but they asked a lot of tricky questions. But
they were good at what they were doing.
Oh, they were very good at what they were doing. They were very good at
hence the success, right? And were you trying to get then a store in Kenora, or?
No, you don't. For the first store that you get, you don't have a choice. They put you in a store.
This is the store?
This is the store. So my very first store was in Amherstburg, Ontario, which is in southwestern Ontario.
You run it, but you don't own it yet.
You do own it.
Oh, you do own it.
The first one you still own.
Okay.
But that store, the very first store I was in, was 3,500 square feet.
Yeah, not a big store.
No, not a big store. It's probably the size of your condo.
A little bit bigger than a house, right?
A little bit bigger than a house.
About the size of my apartment, the two together.
I was going to say. And in those days, like, you did everything in the store. Like, I would come into the store at 5 a.m. I would mop the floors. I was the janitor.
And you're the last one to leave.
Yeah, and the last one to leave. So a typical day, and I had a great team in place. I still talk to many of the people there. And we divided all the aisles up. Everybody had their own aisles to look after. Well, I also had mine, so I had to do that. And I wouldn't see an office until 10 or 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
But a really, really, really good experience.
They did that in purpose to kind of see if you had it, right?
That's
Is that
true.
what it was?
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then you still had to, because owning the store means owning the inventory, and that involves, depending on the size of the store, a lot of money that you then had to go and convince a lender about that you were worthy of.
Well, interestingly enough, because I had the triangle on my back, the Canadian Tire Corporation negotiates the loan for every store.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do that on my own. Canadian Tire did that, which was very, very helpful to me. And you own the inventory, but you also own all the fixtures, the computer equipment inside the store. You own all those assets.
Right.
Canadian Tire owns the four walls of the building.
Right.
And you own everything that's in the building.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So that was my first store, and then from there, you move based on the volume of the store, based on store audits, based on long tenure, and then you graduate to stores. And then, so your second store, you can pick where you want to go, but the store has to become open. So Canadian Tire will send out a message saying such and such a store is available, and you can't go from a 3,500 square foot store.
It's a little bit at a time, eh?
A little bit at a time, you know. So it's a few $1 million in sales at a time, and you would never go from a 3,500 square foot store to the 70,000 square foot store I have today.
Right.
That took 4 moves to make that happen.
Right.
In many years.
So the first one you went through, I know you were in Kenora. You did a couple,
Yeah,
2 or
so-
3 out east.
Yeah, so after Amherstburg, the little store in Amherstburg, we moved to Greenwood, Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
which was on a military base, which was interesting. I formed a lot of great relationships with military guys. And then from there we moved to Kenora, Ontario.
Yeah.
And then finally here.
You came from Kenora to here, right? And your wife's name is Diane?
Anita.
Anita. Yeah, and so now I was here when you likely came here because they had a Canadian Tire store already here
On Central.
on Central, and the fella that was managing is a friend of mine, Tom Stedman.
Tom Stedman is one of the greatest gentlemen I've ever met.
Yeah.
On the first day I was in the store, I'd never met Tom Stedman before, and he
Yeah.
moved back to Ontario at the time.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
He called me on my first day, and the first words out of his mouth, he didn't even introduce himself. He said, "Welcome to Prince George."
Yeah.
And then he told me who he was, and we developed a friendship. I still see him once a year.
Yeah.
Him and his wife are beautiful people.
Yeah, they are. And then Tom was the new store already built then or not yet?
No, the new store wasn't built till 2003.
Okay, so you bought it then.
In 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tom was a unique individual, and which is so interesting in a way, and we'll talk about that more with you as well, because I know a lot of big stores here in Prince George, you know, and especially since the late 90s, 2000, when it looked like this was going to be a major center because, you know, smart money is starting to move in, right, in building the infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And what was unique about Canadian Tire in particular with Tom, as a signal of their management and their corporate style of operating and owning at least part of the organization and selecting their key people, is they became very involved in the community.
Yes.
Is that unique to Canadian Tire, or were we just lucky to have those individuals?
It varies from Canadian Tire owner to Canadian Tire owner.
Right.
I don't have any children. It's just my wife and I. So a lot of Canadian Tire guys have big families, and you know,
Yeah.
they're looking out for their families as well.
Yeah.
And they might not be as deep rooted as others in their communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simply because
it's a dealer choice. We're called dealers, so it's a dealer's choice as to what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I find that unique because it adds to it from a business perspective and then from a corporate perspective. You know, and then, you know, I grew up in Holland, and till I was 24. Then I came here. But my foundation is very much culture oriented. That saying, why are you doing all the things that you're doing in the community, even when I didn't have much money? I was always involved in it because it's our culture.
That's right. And I was the very same, John, as you.
Yeah.
It was part of the culture.
Yeah.
And I left Turkey when I was only 9 months old.
Yeah.
So but still it's part of my upbringing and the culture.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it comes not by design or for any agenda or whatever. It's just who you are.
Yeah.
And I've always done that, and you have always done that. And I know that because we interact a lot of things in the community.
Of course, yes.
We'll be doing things together, so.
And we're in a position where we're blessed to be able to do those things, and so why wouldn't we do those things?
Exactly.
And I think that's part of the culture that you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, the other thing about Canadian Tire, when they built their big store here in 2003, they built this big store, and they said this big store is the new model that is their biggest store model.
Yes, that's true. That's true. They opened 4 stores in the country on the very same day,
right,
across Canada, and touting that this was their the newest direction they wanted to go in, where they didn't want to have big, massive warehouses on location. They wanted to be able to bring everything to the floor.
Right.
Like everything came by truck to the floor, and you had minimal warehouse.
Now, the other thing, just on a structural thing inside a Canadian warehouse, that was not saying, they'll be building a new store and it's going to be much bigger, but we'll keep the other one too, and Selen can stay there, and we'll hire somebody that is further up the progress chain and get him to go into the new store. Not so, eh? No, it was you that's going to go into the new store.
Yeah.
As the dealer.
Yeah. And we were very fortunate because we were in Kenora, and we were at such a volume in Kenora that I should have never probably gotten this store. But many dealers before me turned this store down for whatever reasons they may have had, and I was fortunate enough that they did turn it down because I took it.
Yeah. So this one, that one, and then it was you, and you say take it.
Yeah, because there's a pecking order. Yeah.
The other thing that I find interesting about your stores is that it's, to me, a very attractive store. And that's not because my friend owns it or is a dealer.
No, I understand.
But it reminds me, and if I was in their advertising campaign, then I would say, I go to Canadian Tire because I will find what I'm looking for. Even if I'm not sure they have it, they likely will have it. Even to the extent that I would say, if we don't have it, you don't need it. That's what I would say.
That's very true. That's very true. We've said that before. Yeah, that's very true.
That's how I think about Canadian Tire. And then the other part is that it amazes me in terms of these stores, and I think about Walmart, although I don't go there much. I want my wife to go there, buy all that, but she doesn't either. Don't take it personal, Walmart.
No.
But if I look at a store like this, and also for the people that are watching us, because these stores are amazing, the amount of inventory that you have is saying, there must be all kinds of people crawling around here and marking down, okay, let me count them again. Okay, well then, no, let me count them again. No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Everything is computerized.
Everything's electronic, yeah.
Everything is electronic. It's all logistics. That's how these stores work. The stuff is already on its way from China or wherever it is, and it's already traveling this way. July, the inventory for that particular Christmas is already on the way in our direction.
Interestingly enough, you bring Christmas up. I'll be ordering Christmas at the end of the month.
This month.
Yes, in March.
And
because as you say, it's all coming from overseas, and it goes to a central distribution warehouse, and then it gets shipped out to the stores.
yeah, and all of that is done electronically.
Well, I have the ability to order whatever I want.
Right.
Then there's certain criteria. If something's on sale, you must order it. If something's going to be advertised in one of our flyers, you must order it.
Yeah.
But there are other things you don't necessarily have to order if it's depending on your market.
Right.
It's all market driven. Like we have a huge fishing business in our store because of the
region you live in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So somebody downtown
unique
Toronto,
to this
yeah,
location.
Absolutely. Somebody who's downtown Toronto isn't going to have as much fishing as what we have.
You see, I find it so amazing to see these organizations like that work, which is all based on logistics, and then, kind of looking forward and saying, okay, that's how it works. And then we have a place in North Saanich, and, right at the very end of North Saanich, close to Sydney, they have a... North Saanich is an entry point, I think, for Canadian Tire, because I see all kinds of trucks that are parked at certain locations, and then a couple of days later they are gone because they go all over the island, probably in all the different directions.
Absolutely, you're absolutely
and
right.
it's totally on the way. There's never a question in saying, "Oh my God, I walked by this so and so, and it's out." Let's go quickly run and pick up some stuff and put it. No, it's all on the floor already.
Yeah, that's right.
It's totally managed.
Yes, 100%.
Amazing, huh?
And our inventory largely comes from, we have a number of warehouses across the country, but our warehouse comes from Calgary. That's where we get shipped most of our inventory. And then there's still inventory that comes from Toronto by rail.
Yeah. Since a lot of it comes from China, why are they not taking more through Rupert and Kitimat into Prince George as a hub to distribute it from there?
That's a very interesting question, because currently, stuff from China comes through Vancouver, and in Vancouver it gets shipped all the way to Toronto or Calgary, and then it gets shipped back to us. So the logistics don't seem to make sense, but Canadian Tire Corporation just announced that by 2024 we will have another hub in Vancouver, so that when the product comes to Vancouver Harbor, some of that inventory gets brought to the new warehouse in Vancouver, and then it gets shipped out to us.
Why not to the warehouse in Prince George? The reason that I say that is, that as you likely know, I'm in the lumber business also. We have the largest warehousing and logistics company in northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
So who do I talk to at Canadian Tire? No, I'm just kidding. This makes sense, though.
Yeah, it does. It totally makes sense.
Yeah. But all things that come to mind, right, as to how does this all work. But I find it just amazing how the logistics and how it all kind of flows and is so well structured. It has to be.
It has to be. It's very complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once it is in place,
then
it runs. But then every so often it has to be adjusted and managed. But still, it requires that ongoing management, right?
And then, of course, we had that little thing called COVID, which threw a monkey wrench into the works for everyone.
Yeah.
There were world shortages of all kinds of raw materials to make the product, and that was a difficult time for everybody, not just Canadian Tire, of course. Yeah.
But now every time I go down to your store, that area down there, the whole parking lot is full of people.
Yeah.
It's busy, and the same, the store in Sydney. I don't know if you're familiar with the store in Sydney. A fairly big store too. I don't know if that fits the same size. Approximately, probably it's about the same size.
Probably close, yeah.
Yeah, and and they built it in Sydney, which was kind of, or North Saanich, kind of amazing, really. But I always say, a lot of thought goes into where they
Oh,
put
a
it.
lot of market studies are done before they even dream of putting a store.
Yeah. So that's kind of where things are going.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes to mind is thinking in terms of your activity in the community. And let's talk about that a little bit. You're being involved in virtually everything from the why to, why don't you tell us?
Well, as I said earlier, we are in a position where we're blessed to be able to support many agencies in our fine community. And, I wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have the support of this community who shop in my store.
Right.
Like, God bless them, because they're a lot of the reason of why we're able to do what we're able to do.
Yeah.
So, we always want to give back, and we give back in different ways. We're associated with the Prince George Cougars. So our logo happens to be on the ice in the
I've seen that,
rink.
yeah.
Now, I don't do that because I think I'm going to sell more hockey equipment.
No.
We do that because we want the community to know that we want to be a fabric of the community, and it's our way to thank the community for supporting us.
Exactly.
And that's I guess that's my line of thought for everything that we do. For whether it's different agencies in town like YMCA or Elizabeth Fry or the Cougars or the whole gamut. We like to support local high schools and high school teams. We do a lot of work with Jumpstart, which is Canadian Tire's charity. And in fact, this summer we're building a all-inclusive park just across the street from the new fire hall. And we're very excited about that.
Yeah,
as well.
right by the
or
arena.
the old tennis courts.
Yeah. Very nice.
So yeah, we want to. I want to be a part of everything.
Yeah.
I often talk about the fact that I have a terrible case of FOMO, fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on anything. So we try to be included in anything that we possibly can, and we're very happy to do so.
Yeah, you were involved in the Y and Salvation Army.
So you name it, we've probably been involved with it.
Yeah, and you probably found us in many of those occasions.
Yeah, of course we have. Of course. Well, yeah, because I remember when there was an induction of the YMCA. We were both there together.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I remember that. So for me, that's an important thing to do. It's not necessarily to drum up more business. If people like us, we're fortunate that they come into our store. But I think there's a payback for that, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, and so what is also important for me as a podcaster, that we are showing a lot of gems that we have in this community. Mm-hmm. May that be in sports, or may they not always be recognized to the full extent as possible. You're an example of that as well, is that a lot of people are watching our podcast, and I think it is important for everybody to know as to, the next time I walk into Canadian Tire and I think of Selen, that is his place here, and and at the same time meeting them or hearing them being involved in the community in some form or fashion, then connects those.
Yeah,
together.
I like what you're saying, John, because any customer that purchases something in my store, a portion of whatever they've bought is going to go back into the community.
Yeah.
And the community at large. We do international work as well, because I'm very fond of Africa, and we do work in Africa. We do.
We'll talk about that a little bit too. Yeah.
And all those are important to me. I often say to my staff, anything that we do from a charitable perspective, they are also involved because they're supporting me.
Exactly.
So they're a part of everything.
And they're proud to be part of Canadian Tire, right? Mm-hmm. So that we, as employees, and we have the same in our company.
Yeah.
They are proud to be part of the company,
of course,
because of what we do and
of what
who
you
we
do
are,
and who you and what you represent as a business. It's amazing what you do as well. Yeah. And I thank my lucky stars every day that I'm able to be doing what I'm doing.
The other thing that we worked on together was doing the Titans.
Yes.
And we're going to start that again.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk about that with you at some point, but I believe that has to continue.
I think it has to continue too. I think it was a good thing to have started. I think we need to get on television with it.
Yeah.
And get our messages out there. I know specifically, I was thinking about that today on the way over here. I remember we supported a young lady who had all kinds of eco-friendly soaps and detergents.
Yeah,
and
she was the winner.
Yeah, she was the winner. Yeah, that's right.
And she still is there.
Yeah, I think that's great. So
and several of our candidates, I don't fully remember some of the names, but they have been very successful. And after that, mentioned to me several times that it was that particular. Not saying that we are.
No, but that was their big break.
Exactly.
Which I'm proud to be a part of as well.
And get the feedback and the ongoing support, because even some of those people that from there on in started to become entrepreneurs and pursued it, kept in touch with us, as individuals and looking for feedback, and that part is so important. And I think it is something that we will keep supporting.
I think so too.
We'll look at it and we'll talk to you about that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the other thing that I found interesting about you is that
Should I be nervous? You found out a lot of things about me.
Well, you're very interesting.
You know more things than I do about you.
No, that's it. That's okay. So, what I found interesting is the future stars with you, and that is the Pinball Clemons. And I thought, what does that mean? I thought, is it a game of some sort? And obviously, what I then did is I went to Google and I kind of looked it up as to what it is. And I was amazed. You have been involved in this with the people about it for many, many years. And you are one of many corporate supporters that, supporting this. And our goal, as they said, is to raise $5 million by January 3rd, 2023. Did they?
We're on track to do so.
Yeah,
we're on track to do so.
So tell us about it.
That is very near and dear to the Pinball Clemons Foundation is very, very near and dear to my heart. And we sponsored the University Legacy Breakfast we have for the past 8 years.
At UNBC, yeah.
At UNBC, and because it's a fundraiser for the university.
Yeah.
And so that's how I met Pinball.
Yeah.
His name is Michael.
Yeah, he was there talking to you about it, and that gone click.
Yeah, well, and Pinball was a wide receiver for the Toronto Argonauts.
Right.
And he got the name Pinball because he was everywhere. He was in and out of the players on the field, and he looked like a pinball going to the...
Like shooting and shooting.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was like. So that's how we got that name Pinball. But I met Pinball 8 years ago. We were a bromance, love at first sight. We both appreciated what the other was doing. I was in awe of him. I don't.
He did a presentation there, right?
He did.
I remember that. I was there as well.
Yeah, he did. He came twice.
Yeah.
But once for the university for sure, and once for the Bob Ewart dinner.
Right.
And what I really appreciated about his foundation was that if you give $100 to the Pinball Clemons Foundation, the whole $100 goes to whatever charitable designation you want to make.
Not a portion at all.
They're not a portion, because all the administrative costs are bared by the board of directors.
And the volunteers.
Yeah. So I found that to be very unique. Not like some charities that we know about that shall go unnamed, where they can have 20% administrative costs.
Yeah.
Which is an awful lot of money.
I try to avoid those.
I also try to avoid those. So while he was here the first time I met him, he asked me if I would like to go to Kenya with him, because they were in the process of building schools in 9 different third world countries. In fact, they ended up building in less than 8 years, they ended up building 231 schools in 9.
And you had never been in Africa, and you did go to.
I have been to Africa. Africa holds this mystique for me. I went in Africa 15 years ago with a good friend of mine, and we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro together.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah, and I thought I need to come back to this country, and
Yeah.
and you can see the need and so on and so forth. So over 8 years, we built 231 schools in 9 third world countries, and then there was Pinball decided to not do as much internationally because he saw a real need in Canada and in Toronto.
Yeah.
So what we do now, and what we've always done, except we're bigger into it now today, is we help young individuals, some of them who live on the streets, with post-secondary schooling. And many of them have graduated and are getting jobs and are getting careers, not just a regular job, but careers.
So those are young people that are disadvantaged in some form?
Yeah, those who couldn't otherwise financially be able to go to post-secondary school.
Okay.
And that's largely what drives that engine today with him.
Right.
But I remember, so the first time I met him, he asked me if I wanted to go to Kenya, and I said yes immediately, because I don't want to miss out on anything.
Right.
And then about a little while later, he asked me if I would like to be on his board of directors for the charitable foundation that he and his wife started. And I said yes right away. So I said, so long as you go on a guy all the way from Prince George coming to Toronto, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, now today, I'm the chair of the board, which I really enjoy doing as well.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of work with them that we're very happy to do.
Yeah, so and that again is something that I was not fully aware of, that I'm not at all actually of the...
I love this man. He's like my brother from another mother. He's an amazing individual. His wife is just as special, and he has 3 daughters who are very, very bright and intelligent young ladies.
I found it interesting, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, that he did a presentation at UNBC, and I was there, and I found him, very interesting, very convincing, and then that's the first time that I ever heard of pinball. So.
Well, and he's interesting in just the way that he presents. We had sponsored the event, so we were sitting right at the front of the room, thinking that we've got the best seats in the house. Well, really, nobody had the best seats in the house, because he was running all over
like a pinball.
Like a pinball. He was all over the auditorium talking to various people, and he's just a very, very likable man, and he's very authentic.
Yeah, that's what I found too.
Yeah, he's very authentic. Yeah, I like that.
Now the other thing, Selen, that you were quite involved in, as we both were, is the Wheelan Warriors. And the Cancer Society and all the things around. And just for our guests that are looking in and watching us from all over the place, Prince George being, about nearly 750 kilometers away from Vancouver. The main medical services are really in Vancouver, although in northern BC we have a hospital here, a main hospital. We now have a cancer clinic here, and then the Wheelan Warriors have been steadily supporting that adventure here, and donated close to $1 million so far, all spent here, not someplace else.
That's right. They've done a remarkable job. Karen Piche was the one that came up with that and did a fantastic job. One of the most fun events that I go to every year is their gala, where they raise money. And the first few galas were in the Prestige Hotel, but they outgrew that very quickly because it caught on like a fire. And then we were up at the Hart Community Center for a number of years. And this year we're actually going to be at the Civic Center. We're hoping to have 500 to 600 people at that one.
And you likely will.
Oh, and we likely will. Yeah. They are remarkable people. Karen is second to none. Her partner James is an amazing man who has his own cancer story. He would be an interesting person to interview on. I
have had him on my podcast.
He's a very interesting.
Both him and Karen.
They're brilliant.
And I've known him for a long time. And and then the other part that you were quite involved in is Boogie with the Stars.
We both were.
Was it 2018?
I think you're right. Yeah, we both were. And that was a fun evening too.
It was a fun evening. And
what was interesting about that evening is we had a campaign to get, I forget the number, I think it was
30,000.
Well, wheelchairs. We were getting new wheelchairs for the hospital.
Correct.
And it was 80 to 100 wheelchairs that we were starting a campaign for. Well, interestingly enough, once again, the citizens of Prince George came to the rescue, and in that one single night, we raised over $100,000 and bought all the wheelchairs in one foul swoop.
Exactly.
That was a very proud moment.
Yeah, and the amount that they had thought that we would at best collect would be 30,000.
30,000. That's right. That's where the 30,000.
And we were close to 100,000, or slightly over 100,000.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. But what was fun about it is that for those people that watch some of our other podcasts, Selen and myself were involved in that particular podcast, and New Year's Eve actually, in 2018. Then a good friend of both of us is Kendall Kershaw and her friend Tyler Sanchez. I had him on the podcast here a couple of days ago, and we did, kind of talked about all the things that we talked about. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. But they were attending 22, 23
That's right.
evening, and they did an amazing dance again.
They did.
And I showed that on their podcast, actually. If you have an opportunity to watch the podcast, it is online. I think it was since Thursday morning or last Tuesday. But nice to see them, and they are. So let's talk about that a little bit. Is that the other part with me is that I'm 82 and a half, and and in 2008. And I'm one of those individuals, every year I make a commitment, I'm going to go to the gym, as everybody has done, and that's my New Year's resolution, and then I do it for 2 weeks, and then I find 100 reasons as to why I can't go. Because
as we all do.
As we all do. But then in 2008, I nearly died because I got a case of diverticulitis. And diverticulitis is where you get a rupture and then the toxins go through your system. Extremely painful, but I got a high threshold for pain. That's not good. And I just got here to the hospital. I was in Victoria, made my way back to Prince George, I don't know how, and then got into the hospital, got an operation. They took a section out of my colon, and then, and then sewed it back together, and, and then that was kind of the message to me, I got to take this more serious in terms of my diet and in terms of getting in shape. And, and so I did that. And in 2009, early 2009, I think, after I was barely recovered from this, I went to the gym, I got myself a trainer, and I started training in earnest, looking at diet and all the other things, and knowing, that time has come for me to do that. And so, and I was 68, and and then for about 9 years, first for about 4 years I started training, and with the trainer, and 4 or 5 years, and then somebody said to me, have you ever thought about competing? I said, me? And and I kind of took that serious, and then I took it even more serious, and then I think it was in 17 that we started getting closer to competing, and then I competed here at Prince George in the show, came in second in bodybuilding in my group, third in physique, which then put me in the category of qualifying for the provincials. I sponsored my friend, Kendall, and so both of us went down to the provincials.
Yeah.
She won, I won, and it placed me again in third in bodybuilding, second in physique.
That's brilliant.
For the nationals, qualifying for the nationals in the Arnolds.
That's brilliant.
And so by now I was nearly 70, and and she was 17, so I was the oldest. She was the youngest. Tyler was there, and her family was there, and But the amazing thing about it was that that even at that age, I knew if I made the commitment and stayed the course and had a goal, then I would succeed. But what did it for me is the warning that I got in saying, okay, get in shape, because there is nothing more important than health, mental and physically, and to stay active.
Well, John, I have tried to emulate what you're doing. And my wake-up call was I have back issues. I have degenerative disc disease in my lower back. I also have scoliosis in my back, which you can't operate on that. It just is what it is, and you have to deal with pain. And I've been overweight most of my life, up and down. Same as what you're talking about. You do it for 2 weeks and then make excuses not to do it. So since last May, I chose to live a healthier lifestyle. It took me 64 years to figure it out, but I did. Yeah. And I have to tell you that our mutual good friend, Scott, got me involved with Kendall, and I haven't looked back. I've lost 60 pounds in just less than a year, and I'm in...
Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing. It's like a new life. And I really appreciate that. I was just with her this morning, and she's a very inspiring young lady, and very, very motivating, and it is so important. And I don't have any regrets in my life, really, but I regret that I didn't do that sooner. And maybe to some of our listeners, that's a learning too.
And that's why we're telling them, right? So that right. For those that think I'm too old, I'm too much this, I'm too much that, and all of the other excuses. At the end of the day, there is nothing more important than having physical and mental health.
Absolutely.
And then and to preserve that to the best of your ability, the one thing to do first and foremost, and you look great. And I know that you've lost a lot of weight, and that's because of the training that you do with the trainer that you have.
But sadly, I had to get inspired by having a bad back, but that's okay. At least I'm there today.
And you committed to it.
Yes.
And then part of that is for me is that the reason that it works for me is that I have to have a trainer, because in order for me to go, I must have a commitment.
Yes.
And I go from appointment to appointment. That's my life. And that once I have the commitment, I will go out of my way to be there. And that keeps me then going.
And I'm very much the same, John. And I know I have to be accountable to this young lady.
Exactly.
I don't want to let me down, but I don't want to let her down either. So
no,
I'm
because she's proud of what you're doing.
Yes, 100%.
And the same applies to me.
Yeah.
So I've been friends with her for many, many years, but she, when we go, put it bluntly, she kicks ass. Like if I'm there, there is no, diddling her down. Be working out, We have goals and we have objectives. That's what we do.
If I tell her that the weight she puts on is too light, she lets me know it, because she'll add all kinds of weight onto me.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a nice interaction to have with her. And I think personal trainers like that are very, very hard to come by.
Very hard to come by.
Yeah.
Very hard to come by. And for me, it's very important because I'm very sensitive to the type of trainer that I have. Mm-hmm. I've had some very, very good trainers, Carly Green and Aaron Simpson are a couple of them over the many years that I've had that are very, very good. And so is, the Kendall and is a very, very good trainer.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
But it's so important, and if you can be, and it's an inspiration to others, right?
100%. I know even some of our staff have gone down that same road after they saw what I was doing as well, and I'm glad that happened. That's great. They're improving their lives.
Yeah, and that's what it is all about, So anything else that you can think about in terms of what we've done in the community? And you asked me a question when you came in. I said save it until because this is interaction.
I think it's going to be more interesting to interview you than it is to interview me. But my question was what is your why? What is the reason you came up with this incredible studio and are doing a podcast, and you're 100th one in not very much time? What made you want to pursue this?
It started kind of with before COVID, and that I wanted to get a message out about the forest industry in particular. And as you know, my business is 3 silos. The one is forest industry, the largest one. Warehousing and logistics is the other one, and the other one is real estate and both residential, commercial, and industrial. But lumber in particular has been part of my life from the time I was young.
From day one, yeah.
Yeah, and in particular, value-added manufacturing is saying, how can we get more social and economic value out of this amazing precious resource that we have here. Mm-hmm. I love Canada, I love BC in particular, and I love Northern BC. And I think it is the land of opportunity here, and it's still, relatively speaking, in its infancy. Lumber is going to be part of it, but other part of the industry. If there's all the resources that we have here, Prince George will double, triple, quadruple in price over time. And and it will happen, I believe, sooner than most people think.
I agree with you. And I think that's the vision of our new mayor as well.
Simon Hughes, and I like Simon, has been a friend for many years too. Mm-hmm. But coming back to this other one, so then a lot of times, not much is known about the forest industry, and I've been doing that even in Holland already and here. I felt I had to speak about the forest industry in particular more and more. So, somehow we made an arrangement with Shaw to talk about BC's forest industry, history of the BC forest industry, and started as a half-hour program. And I started interviewing people that had history in the BC forest industry and did about 35 projects with them. Excellent. Then COVID came. That meant we could no longer use the Shaw studio because of COVID. And then I had bought this apartment already, and then we started debating as to, after a little while into COVID, we said, well, why don't we start doing a podcast using our podcast studio here and creating this as a studio. And so we started doing that, and then we wanted to do it well. And in terms of the setting is beautiful, looking behind us. The setting, it looks like very casual, but it took some mental adjusting to how should we do it? Should we set up the 2 couches, or do we set up a table sitting across from each other? Or I had done that at Shaw. This was the better way of doing it, because I like to do it casual.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
That's what I like about it. So then we started doing that, and then from there on in, already have had an experience of the 35 interview semi-podcast that I did on Shaw. We started doing them here.
And this isn't just local, as you were saying earlier, it's international.
International, yeah. So because we do on physically together, but also virtual. As you can see, here is the video or the screen. Normally when we do virtual, and we have done people from Sweden, from Holland, from Central Europe, from Phoenix, and we will do more and more and more all the time. I usually sit on where you're sitting, and then I had the two people sitting side by side, just like they are on CNN.
Yes.
And the pictures are very, very perfect.
Yes.
And so we're doing more of those, and then we became more engaged than other people are. And sometimes I forget how many we did in January. I think something like 15 podcasts.
Oh my gosh.
But initially we did maybe, should we do one a week or should we do one every 2 weeks? And then we decided, well, the more we can do, maybe up to as many as 2 a week. Or is 1 a week, and then we did 2 a week, and then some weeks we do 3.
Oh my gosh.
And I like it, and it works for us, and they've been very, very successful. I'm still doing the ones on the forest industry, BC forest industry and transition, although they are part of the whole mix. Rob Schutz, one of the forest industry experts, I consider myself an expert as well. We talk about changes that are taking place in the forest industry. What is the what are the changes? Why are we going the direction as an industry this way or the other way? How do we sustain the industry, and what will it look like as we go forward? I think very many people are very interested in that. In fact, Rob Schutz, I think we did a podcast with him a couple of weeks ago, and I think we have a $500,000 viewers.
Viewers, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So the response has been, very, very active.
Good for you, and it's nice that you're getting the word out on so many different topics, a whole myriad of topics.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about, while we're talking about you anyway, let me ask you about your books. What inspired you to write your 2 books?
Now did you see those? Have you?
Yes, I have read Against All Odds.
Okay.
I have a copy of the other one too. I haven't read that one yet.
Did I sign it for you?
Yes.
Both of them?
Yes, yes, you did. Thank you.
So this one here, Against All Odds, that is this book, and I always say, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And I have started this book many, many times before. And, and then I started it, and then I stopped it. And the reason that I did it is that it's not a hurrah, hurrah, John, how successful he is, but in spite of it all, how well, it can work if you stay the course. And, like my background is, I was born in 1940 in northeastern Holland, and during the war years, and my mother was on her own because my dad was in the Dutch army, and the last time we saw him was in Rotterdam before it was bombed. And then for 5 years they didn't know he was dead or alive. And she had 3 little kids. I was the youngest, trying to get through the war, and it was pretty rough.
I'll bet.
And I still remember the times that I was 3 or 4 years old, hundreds of planes overhead as they came from the UK, mainly bombing Germany, and day and night time. So that has been still part of me. I still remember hunger. The 3 feelings in particular that I remember is hunger, that feeling of hunger. I still sometimes have that now still, as I had it then. And then the feeling of cold. The winter of 44, 45 was extremely cold, and exceptionally cold. A lot of kids died. There was no food, no fuel, and and we used to go as kids. I was 5, 4.5, 5, and then my brother was 2 years older, my sister 1 year older. We'd take gunny sacks, we go to the railroad yards, pick up anything edible or burnable, just to, and then at nights we would sit in a little area in the house that was heated, and it was very hot but also very cold, and I still feel the cold. And then the anxiety, because you could feel it from, there was never peace, because there were either planes overhead, or we were liberated April the 12th, 1945 by the Canadians. And right from that point forward, I knew I would go to the land of my heroes.
Yes.
That's where I would go, to Canada.
And through those, you experienced some horrific things. Do you believe those experiences help define who you are as a person today?
There's no question about that. Because those, although they are not directly PTSD, will stay with you. The other one is the inner child, is the fear of losing that person that was protecting you. And I had counseling for the inner child even when I was in my late 50s.
Oh my goodness.
And those are emotionally, they really, really go deep down, emotionally very.
Of course.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. The other one was so in this book then, I wanted to write about, what it took, and, and then staying the course and still being successful, if that's what success is defined.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote it, so that as an inspiration to others. And then the other one is this one here, and you likely already know that I am ADHD. And it took me till I was 57.
That was good. My next question.
Yeah. I walked into a store here when I was 57, and Books on Fourth. And I looked in the book, and it was Driven to Distraction was the title of the book. And as I was standing there, and I don't ask me why I was reading, I have no idea. I started reading, and it said ADHD, and I said, oh my God, that's me.
Oh my goodness.
And so and that explained a lot of things. So I bought the book, I wrote in it in Dutch.
Oh my
Now
God.
I finally know what, because I was ashamed of, I thought it's a mental disorder.
Yes.
And what am I going to do? Go to the bank and say to the bank, I want to borrow from you X amount of millions of dollars or $100,000 of dollars, whatever it is. But I have a bit of a mental problem. They call it ADHD, and they say, well, have a nice day, right? Things have changed since gradually.
Yeah.
And, and I've become more vocal about it, increasingly so in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And, and then decided to write this book about it. And the book has been very, very successful, actually.
Excellent.
And,
Congratulations.
and that's why I wrote it, so.
And congratulations on a very sensitive topic that people don't want to talk about.
Exactly.
And the fact that remains that it is important to talk about it, and it's okay to talk about it.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by, Selen, that I don't, find somebody saying to me, I never told anybody about this, but I'm ADHD.
Yes.
Our best friend is ADHD.
Yes.
Our trainer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So, and only recently diagnosed.
Yeah.
So, and so that's why I wrote this. And then that is this one. And then I finished another book here.
You did.
That will be printed, coming out in July. And that is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And the reason that I wrote that is that so many people, are making decisions and they hate what they are doing. And I said, if that's the case, change. How important it is that, that at some point in life you start looking at what do I really like to do, and and that then becomes part of your life that will affect everything around you. And as you do, and I know that already with you and myself, there's another day that goes by with all the challenges that occur that I will say, I wouldn't want to do anything else other than what I'm doing.
No, I completely agree with you, and we're both blessed to have the lives that we have, and we made our own lives. Like everybody makes their own path, and I think that's important. Like when you read your book, you had a tough life, and you made the best of it, and you became very, very successful.
I never gave up.
No, you never gave up. And that's very inspirational, and I know that in this community you're a mentor to many, many, many people, because if it can happen to John Brink, then it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. And to me, the glass is always half full.
Yes.
I avoid the negative. And the other thing that I say, that's why I have this one. My employees made this one actually. It's 2547, and then it says my foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic,
yes.
And what follows is success.
Yes.
You know what the 2547 is, right?
No.
Okay. So when I left Holland, I felt I had been a failure, and I can say that to you now because I was not very good in school. Mm-hmm. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and they said, okay, what am I going to do with this guy? I send him to mentally disturbed school or challenge school, or do we get him a job? So they got me a job and training as a furniture maker.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was a good thing.
Yeah.
But then I always indirectly felt I had failed in Holland, because in Holland they're saying, okay, you want a job, show me your diplomas. Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't got any diplomas. So and so I felt I had to go to the land of my heroes, start with nothing.
Yeah.
And then my goal is to build a lumber mill, a sawmill. That's what I'm going to do.
And you knew that at age what?
And when I left Holland at 12, I knew that. At 5, I knew I was going to go to the land of my heroes.
Yes.
My dad worked in the lumber. I loved the lumber. I knew I would have a career in lumber. Then combining those two together, I was at the age 10 or 12, I knew already I was going to go to Canada. I was going to build a lumber mill. Wow. That's what I was going to do.
Amazing.
And then I was going to start out with nothing. That meant I had a suitcase. I had 3 books with me. I still have them. I had 2 sets of clothes, and then took $150 when I left Amsterdam. Then flew into Montreal. Then took the train across Canada into Vancouver. I couldn't speak English, and then talked to a German fellow by coincidence that was there, and told him what I wanted to do. He said, Prince George, go to Prince George.
Oh my.
I took the bus to Prince George, and by the time I got off the bus, about 3 blocks up from here, the building is still there, the old Greyhound station.
Oh, yes, yes.
And, I counted my money. I had $25.47. I called it at least 3 times. That's what I had.
Oh, my gosh.
Now,
that's remarkable.
What you find interesting, I don't want to sell you this. Can you show me what the price of the book is? It's on the back.
Don't say it's $25.47. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Good for you.
So that's what all my books will be.
Yeah.
All of them are $25.47.
$25.47.
Yeah. So
brilliant.
The point is this one, coming back, a long answer to a short question, is that why the book? Well, I did the book simply because I feel that I want people to think that they can do it, and it's not, for this reason or the other reason, I cannot do where the opportunities are. And I said, not so. They are there if you want to go out and get it.
That's right. That's right.
And then the other one, in terms of ADHD, is important. The other part and you close to this in a way, is that with ADHD, it's not only that the frequency of occurrence much higher than people had anticipated, but also people that are affected by learning, the problem that I had is attention was a problem, and and then I'm kind of, I call it a superpower, ADHD.
Yes.
I'm a pen machine, if you want, or a buzzsaw. I'm like, bzz, 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 I can do 20 things all at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. But this, in terms of structured learning, where you have to spend 4, 5, 6 hours, 6 days in a class or 6 years in a classroom, doesn't work for me.
No, and look how far you got with, you had ADHD, but you were able to have all these other amazing accomplishments. That's incredible.
What I'm saying is that what I'm talking about here is formal education. The most valuable education is really what you get, or potentially you can get on your own outside of that environment, or combine the two.
Yes.
And so what this book is meant to address is also those that are affected by slow learning, or people that are affected indirect or directly by trauma. I'm thinking First Nations in a lot of cases, or other people that have been affected by trauma. And so the interesting part about this book, Selen, is that at one time I was sitting in the flight from Victoria to Vancouver, and this one fellow was sitting next to me, and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "I kind of do." And he said, "Well, I'm Tom Romer. I was sitting next to you last year." And he said, I'm Vice President of Academics of the British Institute of Technology. And they are involved in something, and I told them what I was doing in terms of my book and then this one. And we started talking about, in this short flight, about micro-certification. That meant education where, rather than dealing with 4 years, 5 years of studying a whole lot of stuff, but only the core of it is this very limited amount of time that you need to acquire the skill sets for that particular job. And then add the other things later.
Afterwards, yes. That makes sense.
And when he told me about that, I said to him, the following week I saw him again, and I was sitting in 2A, and he was sitting in 1A, and the plane was full, and I signaled to him, I said, "So wait for me when you get out, because I need to talk to you." And we were about 3 weeks, 4 weeks away from getting the book printed. I was short of something had to be in the book that I still was trying to get my fingers on it, that micro-certification. And I talked to Tom, and I said, "I need you to help me with this, and write a portion for me on micro-certification." So that is also part of this book.
That's fantastic.
And that's what makes this book unique.
Yes.
And so, but the books have been, very successful.
Good for you. Amazing.
Then I'm writing one more after the one that's printing in July, at least one more for every year that I can still do that, is that, and the next book is Living Young, Dying Old. And that's about the stuff that you and me were talking about.
Yes.
Is how do I stay healthy, fit mentally and physically, and then still have all the abilities, a little bit of luck along the way.
Oh, of course.
But to stay healthy and still be able to do things. Not so many people already have given up when they are 40, 50 and say, "No, I'm done," so I lay on the couch, that's it, So, and
that goes back to your attitude, passion, and work ethic too.
Absolutely.
Positivity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's the question to that answer.
Yeah, very good.
Any other things that come to mind, that...
Oh, we could sit here and talk for a long time, John. I just appreciate that you had me on your podcast. Thank you so much.
Selen, I appreciate it, and we'll obviously stay in touch.
Of course.
And again, thank you for picking your brain about Canadian Tire. And I've always kind of thinking, sharing with our guests that are watching us from all over the world, is knowing that the smallest stores that you started with, and then the bigger ones that you have now, and how you progressed in your career from 16, 17-year-old.
And I did it the same way as you did. Attitude, passion, work ethic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And see where you are now.
Yeah.
And I hope that our guests that are watching, we can share with them a few of the pictures of the stores there you worked when you were in Prince George.
Oh yeah, sure.
We're going to do that.
We can do that. We can do that. Thanks
Selen.
again, John. Appreciate
it.
you.
Take care.